As people are arriving, welcome, good morning. Welcome to the webinar session. I'm just going to do a really quick introduction on TCC, and then we will pass it off to the Limitless Youth ladies, and they'll be able to give you the rundown of what's going to be going on today. So my name is Elise. I work for TCC Canada, and we are a virtual and office provider solution. So we do things like virtual office spaces, mail and phone services. We also do things such as meeting rooms if you just need a space for a little bit. We also have permanent office spaces, and as you sure you could tell, our business is primarily service-based and usually face-to-face. So during this pandemic and shutdown, we have been running webinars with different experts in different fields and bringing them on and just offering as much support and information that we can for our community to help provide them that the community feeling and the support during this time. So we've got some wonderful ladies on with us today. I'm very excited for them to join us, and I'm going to pass it off to them so that they can get started.
Hi there. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. Again, we're Limitless Youth Inc., a child and youth-based wellness service and place within Ottawa. So today we're going to be talking about healing and empowering the pandemic parent, which is what a time right now. And the components that we're going to discuss in further detail are being kind to yourself as a pandemic parent. This is happening to everyone, and it's something that, you know, kindness and care also is important to the parent and the people going through it. And the therapeutic power of relationships, which is super important. We're also going to touch upon why emotional safety is more important than homeschooling. And finally, we're going to talk about going back to the quote unquote normal without stigma or outside expectations. And so a little bit about us. Myself, I'm Sophia, one half of the co-founding of Limitless Youth. And then I have my co-founder and partner, Joanne LeBlanc. And for my background, I have a developmental service diploma as well as the child and youth care practitioner advanced diploma. And Joanne has the child and youth care advanced practitioner diploma as well. And a little bit more about us. We have, the same path and the same college course we attended together. However, I have a very large passion with working with people with different needs and different abilities and disabilities, and supporting them using alternative learning and alternative tools, such as behind me you can kind of see some hay and a farm barn. And I enjoy and really have a passion for incorporating rescue horses and horses in a way of learning and skill building. And Joanne here with her handy notebook is an incredible builder of programming, service support, and advocating for our children and youth in our city. So with that, we combined those passions and those skills and created Limitless Youth Inc. And we have 3 C's that we really follow, which is the community component, being creative, and collaboration, which is a super key piece in the work that we do. And a little bit more detail on our organization. So again, Limitless Youth is the name, and this has been created from an empowerment-based foundation. And we created that empowerment base with a personal power model that we created from a 1 to 6 step option. And this really encompasses how we create our programming and how we approach all the work that we do. And so you can take a moment and kind of read it over, but ultimately this is making sure that each individual we work with feels that empowerment piece from either themselves, others, the environment around them, the connections they can make, as well as the power that they have to, try new things and also decline if things don't feel really safe or a really healthy option for them. And alongside that, I have here individualized, collaboration, and connection. I put those 3 words because once again, we really carry those as high regard for the work that we do. Our process is that if it's, a child or youth knocking on our email door, as we are virtual right now, or getting a referral, or a family asking for support, each time that happens, we take what is going on with them, where they are at that time, and addressing that and that need into an individualized program. And with that, that is huge with collaboration. We need to collaborate with that family, with that person, as well as the incredible existing organizations and services that are in Ottawa. We hold collaboration as a really big piece because, you know, it takes a village to support and to care for, you know, a child. That statement has been said in various different ways over the years, and it's really honestly true. And with that comes connection from that partnership and from that work together, and really helping where people are at. You can build a really strong connection, and that can be a thing that lasts a lifetime. And finally on this, we like to just say that we want to bring community back to community-based services to really pump that connection, that collaboration, and that we can all work together to help our children and youth. And so today, this webinar was inspired and a launch from our empowerment work. We do a lot of parent empowerment support and programming. And from that, and from the conversations we have had with the work that we've done with families identifying they need support, are an even more reason why we wanted to share some components with you today and with this webinar. So with this webinar, it is all about empowering you. It's all about sharing our information and having this conversation started. We do our work with, you know, guidance, and we are ones that encourage the reflection. A lot of our work has the personalized reflection component in it. We don't tell people what to do. We can be a catalyst to share information, and again, like I said, guidance. So today with this webinar, a lot of it is the reflection piece. So to reflect on developing your own strategies, and developing and reflecting on finding the resources and education that actually fit your needs, that you feel are at that need-based level. And the last two are define your own right way of coping. So again, we touched upon the components on that first slide, what we're going to talk about. So we're going to dabble into what that might mean about defining your own right way, and definitely in quotes because it's super individualized. And final is to embrace your power as a parent or guardian, and to really reflect on that there's plenty of positives, and even within those maybe difficult times, that's a really key component, is to reflect and embrace that power. And so I'm going to pass this off to Joanne. She's going to talk about the components that we're going to share today, and she's going to break them down so that we can really have this conversation and learn and grow.
Thanks, Sophia. So moving into our first talking point here, I want to talk about why it's so important that as parents, we take the time to be kind to ourselves before we do any other work on ourselves as a parent and our growth during this time. And before we can discuss that importance, we need to take the time to look at how different our pandemic routines might look in comparison. So I've kind of put up here an example of what a typical parent routine might look like among the pandemic. This might not reflect your routine specifically. The key here is the divided blocks and the focus on predictability in a routine. So before the pandemic, some routines might have had a home-only focus in the morning. You wake up, you do your morning routine with your children, and you send them off or you drop them off to school and daycare. You have a home-only focus at that time, a predictable time block of what needs to be done and what you focus on. Then moving on to the next block of time, there's a completely different focus that takes over. Maybe this is a work-only focus if you're a parent who goes to work after your children are dropped off to caring professionals. Maybe this looks like caring for just one younger child rather than 3 children. Maybe it's attending to different tasks and errands around the house. However, the focus changes from a home and childcare focus only to work-only focus or some other focus. And you can see in the visual, there's different blocks of time that include different predictable routines that continue for what your family has built over a life of predictable outcomes. Then let's look at how a routine might look now and how those transitions might look when everything is at home and everything is done during the pandemic. You can see it's a lot different. There's no predictable transition time blocks. All the time and all the activities and tasks as a parent are being done just as they come up with need, whether that's a meeting and then making lunch and then a meeting and cleaning. There's no predictable blocks of time here. And it's a huge reason that this looks so overwhelming, and this is what some routines might look like during the pandemic, is because there's no access to extra professionals anymore. There's no extra supports. There's no access to outdoors or extracurricular or community engagement. So we've gone from parents having a predictable routine of where they can focus their time to now being school, daycare, coaches, friends, counselors, employees, your child's recess and getting them outdoor for movement, and so much more. So with taking all the drastic changes that have happened so fast for parents and routines, we can't hold parenting abilities to the same standards we would have before. And everyone's standards are going to be different in terms of what their normal used to look like and what they used to be able to accomplish and feel that they were accomplishing well. But in reality, there was no specific training to help parents navigate this. It's amazing now that we have access to webinars like this and extra resources and people moving support to a virtual platform to still give it to you. And it's okay to be using that and to be appreciating that it's there. But that doesn't mean that managing this, we were well prepared for it, and it doesn't mean that it's supposed to be easy with no exhaustion or no stress. As parents during the pandemic, with all the challenges that come from this kind of mixed up schedule, expecting to be different roles, we want to share with you all the resilience that actually comes from this as well, and all the resilience that you as a parent are bringing every day. And as we kind of move on with more of our content, we want to share with you tools that we use, knowledge that we have as child and youth practitioners that will hopefully help you embrace all these strengths and all these kind thoughts about yourself that you can bring as a parent during the pandemic. So in the field of child and youth care, we really focus on the element of therapeutic relationship. It's a foundational piece in the work that we do with children, youth, and families. But before we can examine with you how the therapeutic relationship has so much power, we kind of have to examine what context we're speaking of relationship in. So how we're speaking about relationship going forward is really recognizing that it's reciprocal. Both you as a parent and your child are being influenced by this relationship you have. This could also be true for other members of your household if you live with a sibling or a parent of your own or a significant other. The key here is to realize that we're always influencing the relationship one way or another, and each human in the relationship is bringing something to it that's affecting the other person and affecting their development. Scientifically, even actually, our emotional energy and our emotion and stress and all those weird and wonderful things, they actually scientifically move and are about 4 or 6 feet around us at all times, meaning what you're feeling, your words, your actions, your body language, it's all impacting your relationship as well as the emotional energy from other people. They're coming at you with different emotional energy, different feelings, different actions, and it's important to realize that there are always 2 or more sides to relationship. And being intentional as a parent can really help harness that. What's amazing, though, about looking at this as reciprocal is that you as a parent already have a beginning of a relationship with your child. you have a foundational piece that child and youth care practitioners have to build from scratch in order to help your child and help your family. When we're in practice and we're in the field, we actually intentionally have to build this from the ground up. We didn't give birth to these children we're helping. We didn't raise them. We didn't spend moments with them until we got to work with them. We actually intentionally have to build this piece by piece before we can do anything with it. You as a parent, however, are already light years ahead of that process in terms of harnessing the therapeutic power that's needed to help your child. And part of this education as child and youth care that we really want to share with you is that after we've gone through this process of building a relationship, getting to know a child or a youth, and really building that with them, we can use that as a central strategy for creating change in our practice. So what does that mean? Using the relationship and building a relationship with a child or youth, or in this case, your child or youth, can increase the trust that they have in trying new things with you. It can increase their comfort of being pushed out of their comfort zone. It can increase communication with telling you about hard feelings, emotions, vulnerability. And from that trust and that communication and that vulnerability that comes with a trusting therapeutic relationship, there also comes the ability to help your child and youth move to positive change. Maybe that positive change is less triggers in their day. Maybe that positive change is finally getting to do a little bit of schoolwork after so long of feeling stressed out about it. Maybe it's talking to you and just coming to you for a hug after a hard moment and not keeping it inside. There's so many ways that it can look for a child or youth to be changing positively from your therapeutic relationship with them. So if we take into account not only the importance of relationships in making these therapeutic changes for your child from your home, but we also recognize that they're reciprocal and we all influence each other, then we can't underestimate how much impact you can have as a parent by improving and building your relationship with your child during this time. As Sophia mentioned earlier, one of the main things we do with Child and Youth, Limitless Youth Incorporated, is we really encourage parents to reflect and find what's right for them. So when we're speaking about therapeutic relationship and building that, there is no right way it has to look. It's about being aware of how you feel in connection with your child and being open and aware of how they feel in the relationship with you, and sort of navigating that together to help create a happy and safe household. But we talk about building relationships, and there's no right way. It can leave it pretty vague as well. So we want to share with you one of the tips out of our toolbox, I guess you could say, to sort of give you a bit of a mindset exercise on how to maybe approach strengthening or building the therapeutic relationship you've already started with your child and youth. So we're using Dan Hughes' PACE model, stands for playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. This is a tool that could help grow your mindset to build that therapeutic relationship, because it's actually used to validate and to explore and to understand your child's emotions when you approach moments intentionally with this model in mind. This can help build a sense of mutual support that lessens the shame that you both feel in a relationship and also increases the amount of compassion you might experience in your relationship with your child. Approaching these elements, playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, empathy, this can take so many forms depending on what your relationship looks like with your child. Playfulness can come from taking time to laugh or to play or to just have that open, calm, relaxed, engaged attitude. It could be just sitting on the deck with your child while they play and approaching and going towards that playfulness. How that looks for you and how that first step towards playfulness and acceptance and curiosity and empathy comes, like we said, that's going to come from you navigating that and finding ways to take steps with you and your child and how that looks like. Next, let's examine why it's important to reflect on this emotional safety in your relationship with your child and youth during the pandemic in general. When we are discussing emotional practitioners, we like to use Bruce Perry's model as examples. And Bruce Perry is a trauma psychiatrist who actually spent most of his practice working with traumatized children. And when I say the word trauma as a practitioner, I realize the word trauma can sound like a scary word. It sounds very serious. It sounds very harmful. And in reality, trauma is a spectrum just as any other mental health area. Bruce Perry, for example, has worked with cases of trauma as serious as the children who were impacted by Waco and were able to be evacuated. He's also worked with cases of trauma as far on the other side of the spectrum as not receiving enough physical affection or hugs as a child. So really, trauma is a distressing individual. And the unfortunate reality of this pandemic is that we can't ignore that this is a collective, distressing time we're all going through as individuals and as a family. Therefore, it really is a trauma-based lens that we look at as child and youth care practitioners to kind of examine how can we increase emotional safety during the pandemic. So if you look at this model I have up by Bruce Perry, it makes very much sense why this pandemic can cause a lot of vulnerability in individuals and families, because it's an unpredictable time. It's prolonged. I think we're on week 10 of school closures, home confinement. And in some cases, this pandemic is quite severe for families and others. There's a lot of fear, there's disease. It can be scary and cause vulnerability. However, if we look at this model, Bruce Perry designed it to look at how we can go from vulnerability to resilience when we're facing stress in our lives. And how he discusses that we build resilience in ourselves and children and youth is by creating more predictable, moderate, and controlled ways that we can handle our stress reactions. What's important to remember about this model is that healing and how this looks and how that predictable, moderated, controlled levels come, it's all based on an individual level, which is one of the reasons we're actually here sharing this with you now, because there's a lot of resources that are shared and accessible about how to create a predictable routine at home, how to create a controlled environment and schedule during this time of the pandemic. And while those all have their benefits for creating a predictable environment, we have to recognize that healing also happens on an individual level, inside ourselves rather than outside of ourselves during the time of healing from trauma. So when we have either stress responses or the need to outlet and control our space and feel these things, maybe how often we engage or disengage with stressful moments. An example I can think of off the top of my head is the mail that I've been ignoring on my table for about 10 weeks as the pandemic has gone on, because I'm choosing to disengage with that stressor. I can't handle it on top of everything else right now. That's something that I'm controlling and moderating my healing in. And the patterns and behaviors that are coming with this. And the same goes for our children and youth. What we learn from Bruce Perry is that being aware of how our children are healing and respecting it is crucial for building resilience in them during this time. Maybe for them, it looks like shutting down socially and disengaging from connecting with siblings or family members. Or maybe it comes out in play. But as much as we can be aware and allow ourselves and our children to control how they heal with this stress that comes from this citywide, province-wide pandemic, then it's going to be a huge step in building the resilience that comes with this stressful time. Putting the importance on emotional healing and safety is going to support the difference between resilience and vulnerability. And resilience is going to support educational needs, social needs, physical needs, and so much more after this. So we can see in this quote by Bruce Perry, when children feel safe, comfortable, and know what to expect, this helps them become resilient. So regardless of all the outside expectations you and your family may have during this time, creating a safe, comfortable, predictable environment is going to build that resilience for whatever this next step is. Whatever happens next in this unpredictable, prolonged, severe, vulnerable creating pandemic, we as parents can take it onto ourselves to say and create a home environment that builds resilience for whatever comes next as a family, as a student, in all forms that the family may face coming after the pandemic. So we've looked at all this reflection we've asked you to do, and reflection on why you should be kind to yourself, why your relationship has so much power, and why that power is so much more important than outside expectations. But that's a lot of us asking you to think about many different things at once, and we realize that as practitioners, it's not easy for us to even handle all these different knowledge bases working in our day-to-day. So we're hoping to give you a bit of a more specific reflection tool out of this webinar and share a specific reflection that may help you go back to normal on your own terms and reflect on what that looks like to you. A toolbox in this context, what we're sort of speaking about, is something that every practitioner has. It can be mental, thinking about your toolbox, having all these thoughts and ideas you've collected over time. Some people have jumbled bunches of notes of what practices and strategies are in their toolbox. It could be a specific box. There's many different forms that practitioners use their toolbox in, and it's essentially a gathering of all the things that we've learned from other people, from education perspective, from our clients, and it's kind of all put together to pull from when we need it. And the reason we're sharing with you starting to build your toolbox is because as a parent, we already went through how many roles you are expected to play with your child right now. And during this time of being your child's counselor, teacher, recess, coach, mentor, parent, employee, it's safe to say that we would never expect you to memorize a webinar or complete all this therapeutic relationship building and go back to normal just off the top of your head. As practitioners, we don't even do that. So having a toolbox and having gathering of ideas is really going to be key to finding what works for you and your family. We share Dan Hughes' PACE model. We're going to share these reflection tools, but the reality is if they don't resonate with you or you try them and they don't work for you, 100% okay. It's about building your toolbox how you want. If you go and you search or you want to reach out to us about how you can find the tools that are just yours, what fits, what you can try and will create positive change, we absolutely support that. There is no one-size-fits-all way to go back to normal or to parent. So we're really hoping that by sharing this reflection tool, that's coming next, we'll hopefully be able to sort of empower you to think about what you need as a parent, and we really encourage you to go look for that. So this is a tool for your toolbox. It says reflect a lot, as you will see, because that's sort of the theme of today. And I'm going to go through it and just sort of explain what the activity would look like. It's really key to remember, though, that as I go through this and different steps of what this reflection looks like, it's all about control and moderation and predictability for you. So if you do this all at once and you sit down and like reflect, cheers to you. If you want to spend a week thinking about this one at a time, cheers to you. If you want to look at this once and not go back to it until the next week, because that's what you need to reflect, we absolutely encourage that, because this is about your healing and your journey as a family. So when you're reflecting during this time, doing this activity, you can choose to write it on paper. You can choose to video record. Maybe it's important to just write the questions and be able to reflect on them in your mind. And the first thing we want you to sit down and really focus on, to reflect on, is what joy came out of this time. What growth did you experience? What moments did you end up loving that you didn't even know existed? This could be something as simple as sleeping in when you have a schedule that's typically so busy. It could be something as big as realizing how much you've been missing out on time with your significant other. After you've taken the time to kind of reflect on this, think about what challenges you faced. This list might feel like it could be longer, as it's been a very hard time, but it's really important to be aware of how this has specifically impacted you. What negative feelings came up for you during this time? Restlessness, insecurity, lack of routine? What challenges have you faced? So you have a list of joys and challenges. Ideally, we'd like you to separate them because it's going to be way easier for the rest of the reflection. And then we want you to go through and circle the joys you want to keep in your life. And to really think about what you want to keep out of this time. Because once this time goes back to normal, once things reopen fully and everyone goes back to work and daycares are open, it's going to happen so fast. But if you can keep some awareness and a grasp on what makes you happy from this, it's a first step in you figuring out how to make more of that. Maybe you want more meals at home and you've circled time with family. Well, how can you make that happen in your new schedule? And we want you to star the challenges that you want to leave behind. And when we say leave behind, the ones that don't help you build resilience, the ones that don't help you grow at all, challenges, you might want to leave all of them behind, and that's fair. But which ones are harmful to you in a way that is either going to last or is going to get in the way of all the joy that you just circled? So we've made you reflect twice now in this activity. Maybe you've taken a break and come back to it. Maybe you're getting really pumped about what you're going to learn, so you keep going. We're going to dare you to reflect again. And it has a purpose, I promise, because we're going to reflect on how you can keep that joy in your life. We're going to get creative as parents. We're going to look at all those joys we circled, and we're going to say, that's something that's important to me. How can I make this work? Not, I hope my schedule doesn't get in the way of that, or I hope the hours work out, or I hope I have the time and energy. No, we're empowering ourselves with this part of the reflection. We're saying, how can I take control of what my normal looks like to have this time? Maybe for some families, that's waking up a little bit earlier because breakfast is now the only meal that you can have together. If meals are important to you, you can find a way to make that happen. So you've reflected on how you're going to keep all that joy in your life. Maybe you're feeling excited, there's hope, but we also still can't ignore the challenges that are going to come up. As practitioners, Sophia and I, we have some concerns for where this new normal is going, because in history, it's shown that once a trauma has finished and people kind of get through it, it's very easy for people to want to leave it behind and create a stigma around talking about it. And our concern for after this pandemic is, well, it's over. You shouldn't be feeling that way anymore. It's over now. That's not an issue you need to face. It's fine. But in reality, trauma and collective stress, they bring challenges for you. Adjustments to your entire life, a total of 3 times or more over 10 weeks, that does cause challenges. That doesn't mean those challenges have to be scary or you're hopeless to them. In the last part of the reflection, we want you to think, how can you as an individual or a family face these challenges that you think are going to come up? If exhaustion comes up, if challenges of restlessness still come up, maybe you have a routine that is already very home-based, and going back to normal means still having so much time at home. Do you think that's going to be a challenge? How, as a family, can you work around that? How can you create resilience together to work towards that challenge? And the reason we ask you to do all this reflection and all this deciding what's right for you as a parent is because your normal is up to you. What you do with your family and your time and your energy and your growth, that's yours. No practitioner can sit here and tell you this is the A, B, and C of having a healthy normal or having a healthy adjustment outside of the pandemic. We really want you to look inward with yourself and your family during this time, because we want your normal to reflect your needs.
Thank you so much, Joanne. That was an incredible explanation for the information we were sharing today. And like Joanne said in that last slide, look and reflect on what's your normal. And as we mentioned at the beginning and throughout this, we are available, we are here. And so we just want to say thank you so much for attending this webinar, for absorbing this conversation and this information. And we will have a Q&A section after. However, if there's lingering questions or any sort of conversation or points you might want to talk with us about, our email is up on the screen, as well as please check out our website. It's a great spot where we update what we're doing, who we're supporting, and how even you can help support those people too. And so it's a great spot for if you want more information or you want to share it, and just it can really start that conversation for what we talked about today. And of course, our Limitless Youth Ottawa is our Instagram, as we love to put visuals and to share all the things that we try to do and are going to do in our community. So again, thank you so much for attending. We hope you got and you reflected, and that has spearheaded some inspiration and empowerment within yourselves. And so we will move on to the Q&A, but we hope that this can really support the efforts that you are doing with your family and yourself. Thank you again.
You guys were fantastic. Like, honestly, while people, we give them some time to leave questions or kind of process what they've just learned. I mean, I'm a parent myself, so going through this like shutdown and quarantine has been a big struggle at times. It's definitely a learning experience, and like you don't even realize how much those like categories that you have them in, where it's work and it's home and school and all these different balances in your life, when they're gone, how much it affects you, right? Like, my gosh, it's something that it takes something like this to really resonate and like hit home, where you're like, wow, like daycare providers and school, power to you. Like, you guys really, like, huge help. Or even just having family around and being able to see them, it's like huge. So I've definitely taken notes for myself to to balance it all out a little bit more. But I mean, you guys clearly know your stuff, and I love that you're taking this at an angle that's helpful for parents, and not just here's what you can do. And you know, it's more what works for you as a family, because that's ultimately what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That is great. We're so happy that, you know, just even from listening and from sharing it, that has happened for you, because ultimately that was a big component of this. And like we said earlier, where it's just a launch off of the parent empowerment work that we do, because we really want to support what's going on for each family, but especially in this scenario, everyone has gone through this, and kind of how we live with it and go through it is that individual kind of piece. So that's great.
Perfect. Well, it looks like you guys did a pretty good job of explaining everything, because we don't have any questions. So what we'll do, just so you guys know, if you're still watching, we are going to be posting the recording of this on the TCC website, as well as Limitless Youth is going to be posting it as well, I believe. So you'll have lots of chances to go back and revisit the information, and they'll have all their information there as well. So you'll be able to get back in touch with them if you have questions, or you know, you want to use their services further. But thank you guys again for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And for those of you who came and joined us today, thank you for joining us. I know days are busy and long, so we appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much again for inviting us. Yes.
Perfect. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.